In an isolated village in the heart of Scotland, surrounded by dense forests and a constant fog that seems to whisper ancient secrets, there stood an abandoned house known as Blackthorn Manor. It is said that decades ago, an entire family, mysteriously, vanished from that property, leaving behind only a dusty diary filled with disturbing accounts. The legend speaks of a dark entity that would take form during full moon nights, feeding on the anguish and despair of those who dared to cross its gates. The last survivor of that family, a woman named Eliza, was 38 years old and was an artist who had isolated herself from the world after traumatic events. According to the diary's entries, she began to perceive presences during the nights, voices whispering her name and shadows dancing on the wall of the room where she slept. One early morning, while trying to escape the house, Eliza found the lake yard covered in ancient symbols drawn with a liquid that looked like dried blood. The feeling of being watched was unbearable, and every step she took seemed to be followed by a silent scream that tore through the darkness. The story ends abruptly, unexplained, with a final page stained by a dark blot that no one has ever been able to identify. On the other side of the planet, in a small village in the mountains of Vietnam, there are reports of a cursed forest called Tien Duong. People say that individuals disappear there without a trace, and the air becomes heavy and suffocating as the sun begins to set. A young man named Min, 26 years old, decided to investigate the phenomenon after his older brother mysteriously vanished in that location. He was a tour guide, known for his courage and love of nature, but that night Min encountered much more than he expected. As he walked along the trail, the sounds of the forest were replaced by incomprehensible whispers, and a red mist began to spread around him. Min felt as if invisible hands were pulling him into the earth, and when he looked back, he saw distorted figures of people seemingly emerging from the ground, with empty eyes and mouths wide open in silent screams. The forest fully enveloped him, and his last words, transmitted via radio to his sister, were a desperate plea for no one to enter that place. In the frozen peninsula of Siberia, a distant village called Verkhoyansk carries a curse that spans generations. It is said that, during winter, when darkness dominates for consecutive days, creatures known as Yeti shadows emerge to hunt the inhabitants. Among them was Igor, a lumberjack aged 43, known for his strength and courage, who never believed in the old stories until the night his son disappeared without a trace. Igor decided to face the unknown and spent a night alone in the ice woods to uncover the truth. As the wind howled between the frozen trees, he spotted gray figures sliding among the trunks, their claws glinting in the moonlight. The chase was brutal and silent. By dawn, all that remained was a pair of frozen footprints that ended abruptly in the middle of nowhere. Igor was never seen again, and his wife says that since then, the village has lived in constant shadow, fearing what lurks in the relentless cold. Back on the African continent, in the savannah of Tanzania, there exists a little-known legend called the Dance of the Fallen Spirits. On a stormy night, a group of explorers led by Samuel, a 40-year-old anthropologist, decided to document ancient rituals that supposedly opened portals to the other side. In the village where they were staying, the locals warned them not to participate in the ceremony, but curiosity and skepticism spoke louder. During the ritual dance, the fire seemed to come to life, and monstrous shadows began to emerge from the darkness, grabbing the explorers one by one. Samuel managed to flee into the forest, but there he found strange marks on his skin and heard threatening voices around him. When he returned to civilization, he was different, pale, restless, and with eyes that seemed to hide a terrible secret. A few days later, Samuel disappeared, and the equipment he took to record the ceremony showed blurred images and screams that chill the blood of anyone. If you're enjoying so far, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, as there's a lot of heavy content coming your way. And tell me, if you could choose, would you enter a forest where the trees seem to whisper your name? Or perhaps face a night in the middle of nowhere with the sense that something invisible is chasing you? I want to know in the comments which fear paralyzes you the most, because here we're not afraid to face what is dark, but always with respect and caution. This exchange greatly helps the community grow and strengthens every story we share together. In the mountains of Mexico, There is a village called San Pedro del Olvido, where silence is only broken by distant screams that no one can explain. There, the story is told of Rosa, a 29-year-old woman who worked as a teacher in the local school. One night, after a violent storm, she began to notice shadows moving on the walls of her home, shapes that seemed to crawl slowly, as if they had a life of their own. Gradually, reports from the villagers indicated that a dark presence had been unleashed in the vicinity, something that fed on the fear and pain of the people. Rosa tried to flee, but her house was taken by a force that kept her trapped, and the screams echoing in the village were hers, a deep and endless agony that seemed to transcend time. The next morning, all that was found was an empty chair, rocking slowly in the wind and an intense cold that never dissipated. Further south, in the dense forests of New Zealand, there is a legend about an entity called Taniwa, an ancestral spirit that protects and at the same time punishes those who disrespect nature. Michael, a 37-year-old biologist, traveled there to study the rare plants of the region, but ended up witnessing something that changed his life forever. During a nighttime expedition, he saw a massive figure, covered in scales reflecting the moonlight, emerging from the river. The creature not only watched him, but seemed to control the environment around it, making the trees twist and the wind howl like a lament. Michael tried to escape, but was caught by an invisible force that slammed him against the rocks, leaving him unconscious. When he woke up, he was in a hospital with no memory of the events, but carrying strange marks on his body that no doctor could explain. In the rural area of Romania, near ancient ruins, there is a forgotten village where the inhabitants avoid talking about the guardian of shadows. Elena, a 32-year-old archaeologist, traveled there to investigate reports of paranormal phenomena linked to recent discoveries. During her excavations, she found artifacts covered in symbols that seemed to pulse with a dark energy. That same night, whispering voices began echoing through the house where she was staying, accompanied by footsteps that did not belong to any human being. The presence grew more aggressive with every hour, manifesting as dark shapes attempting to pass through walls and objects. Elena realized she had awakened something very ancient and malevolent, an entity that feeds on fear to strengthen itself. Her diary, found later, describes a desperate end, with accounts of dreams mingling with reality, where the guardian promised never to leave her in peace. Since then, no one has heard from her. In the Amazon rainforest, a scientific expedition, led by Raphael, a 45-year-old botanist, suffered an inexplicable attack. The group vanished without a trace, and all that remained were audio recordings with disturbing sounds, screams, whispers, and the sound of leaves being torn apart with unusual violence. Locals say the forest is protected by ancestral spirits that punish those who invade their territory with ill intentions. Raphael, known for his determination and courage, reported before disappearing a sense of being followed by invisible eyes and that the very jungle seemed to close in behind them, blocking any escape. The fate of the team remains a mystery, and local legends only heighten the fear of what truly inhabits those dense, silent trees. In a small coastal town in Japan called Kurihama, there is a dark story that few dare to tell. Long ago, a fisherman named Haruto, aged 48, returned home after a storm that devastated the area. He brought with him a strange object, an ancient amulet he found at the bottom of the sea, embedded in a shipwreck. Since then, strange things began to happen. Sounds of footsteps on the roof at night, doors closing by themselves, and a shadow that seemed to follow him everywhere. Haruto began to lose touch with reality, hearing voices inciting him to carry out desperate acts. One night, he mysteriously disappeared, and all that remained was the amulet discarded on the beach, covered by a thin layer of wet sand. Locals say that anyone who touches that amulet will bring their own doom upon their life, as it carries the curse of a vengeful spirit trapped between worlds. On the other side of the world, in the arid region of the Sahara, there is an isolated village where the night is dominated by a legend called the Sand Hunter. A man named Karim, 35 years old, known for being a fearless explorer, decided to venture alone through the dunes, searching for hidden treasures and ancient mysteries. During his journey, he felt a suffocating heat and heard whispers that seemed to come from the wind. but were so clear that he could almost recognize words. The sand began to move as if it had a life of its own, forming humanoid figures with glowing eyes and mouths open in silent screams. Karim attempted to flee but was surrounded and swallowed by a sandstorm that erased him from the world of the living. His disappearance is still remembered with fear, as it is said that the sand hunter never lets his victims escape, and their souls remain lost forever, trapped in the vastness of the desert. If you've made it this far, I want to sincerely thank you for following these stories that challenge understanding and delve into the deepest parts of our fear of the unknown. If you liked the video, how about subscribing to the channel? Here, every story is made with great respect, care, and a genuine desire to share the terror that fascinates and frightens. I want to invite you to leave in the comments your own supernatural experiences, deepest fears, or even stories you've heard that left an impression on you. Let's build a strong community together, where everyone can share their experiences and learn from one another. And of course, let me know what you thought of the video. If you learned something new, or if any of these stories truly gave you chills. Your participation is what keeps this space alive and vibrant, bringing you the best of horror.